How's it going, everybody? I know I've been gone again for a while. I have a really good excuse, though, yet again. I ended up having to have major surgery mid-December, and it was nothing related to my hearing, but I am thankfully, now I am recovering and I'm on a trajectory to much better health. So thank you for your patience. YouTube has been the farthest thing from my mind, unfortunately. So today I want to talk about my activation and mapping process for my cochlear implant. And again, honestly, my goal for this channel is just to help you if you are kind of thinking about getting an implant or these things haven't happened for you yet. I'm hoping just to maybe alleviate some of your fears and give you just a little more context for what to expect when you go. And I say that word expect because here's the funny thing about that word is honestly, everyone's experience is so different that I'm going to share my experiences with you today, but you need to understand that you just need to be ready for absolutely anything to happen because everyone's experience is totally different. So 2 weeks after surgery, I went back to have my implant activated. So for 2 weeks, it's turned off. You don't even have, I didn't even have the external hardware, so it's not like anything would have worked anyway. But, for 2 weeks, they just wanted me to heal. And for some people, that activation time is different. Some people get activated sooner. Some people get activated later, like they have to wait for a month. It just depends on age and stage. So with activation, they're just trying to turn it on and make sure that it's working and kind of get you just some basic settings to get you out the door. My first bit of advice I would give you is go in with very realistic expectations. Go in with an open mind. Go in with that realistic expectation of, chances are I may not be able to understand speech today. And that's the approach I went in with. I didn't set the bar high because I've heard that a lot of people, when they first get activated, they can't understand words. And I was like, okay, that's okay if that happens. That's normal. So went in, sat down, they gave me the hardware. They showed me how to put everything on. And then, basically you just get a bunch of different beeps that you're going to hear at different volumes. And so they explained to me what they're doing is all the different electrodes in that electrode array in my ear, they're having to go through and set the amplitude for every one of those to a level that's comfortable for me. So they're playing different beeps and they're asking me, is that too loud? Is it too soft? They're trying to kind of set some bass levels. So after we went through all the beeps, then they said, okay, let's see, I'm going to start talking. Let's see how much speech you do understand or what's going on. And I was so nervous. So I could understand most words, but, and this is pretty common, everyone sounded like a weird robot. Honestly, the best example I can think of is you should listen to the beginning of the song Love Bites by Def Leppard. There's like a weird kind of robot-y voice in the beginning of that and at the end, and that's what all speech sounded like to me. I could understand my husband who was there with me, and I could understand most of like what the audiologist and my husband were saying, but they sounded not normal. They sounded like robots, and that's really common. You'll hear that comment often on people that have been activated. That's pretty normal. Again, you have to understand your brain is now trying to hear in a completely different way. It's no longer relying on acoustics. It's now relying on this new digital, world, and it's trying to understand this input and process it in a completely different way. The good news is that the robots for me faded after a couple of weeks. People actually started to sound like themselves. I thought it was going to take a lot longer, and it might for you. That's just the thing. Everybody's timeline is totally different. For me, it was about a week and a half to 2 weeks where my husband's voice kind of started to sound like his voice and less like a robot. Another bit of advice I'd give you is, take support with you if you can. Bring a friend, bring a partner, bring a family member, bring somebody. You just don't know how you're going to react. It was definitely emotional for me, not in a way that I expected. I wasn't like crying or anything, but it was just it's a really intense, it can be an intense experience for people. It was for me, and overwhelming, when you haven't heard in so long, when they first turn it on, everything is just like, can seem really loud and overwhelming, and different. And so bring someone along if you can. So, I got the very basic settings on my app. And again, I'm with Advanced Bionics. That's the company that makes the implant that I chose. And so on the app, I had very basic settings. I had kind of a lower volume threshold set. And then I had some programs that they put in where every week I was supposed to kind of bump the volume up to the next program to kind of get myself equated to volumes getting louder and louder and louder as far as the real world. So I didn't leave with any other programs, really, or we can think of them as presets. It's kind of another word for it, but they're basically called programs. Just the basic, like, AutoSense is one of the names of the programs, and that's pretty much it. That's all I kind of walked out the door with. And then we made an appointment for me to come back a month later for mapping. Now, mapping, you might have heard of this word in the cochlear implant world. Mapping is basically just where they kind of tweak your settings. Before they even tried to do that, they wanted to give me time just to let my brain get used to it and just kind of see how I did with these basic settings. So we made an appointment for me to come back in a month. And so that month was, a little bit wild, just trying to get used to it, and also my brain just trying to get used to the process. It can be a little bit cognitively exhausting, especially in public places. I will say something that helps me out a lot in public places is I have what's called a Roger On microphone, and I'll put a picture of it up on the screen here. This was one of the options that I had when you, I think with most cochlear implant companies, when you get your hardware, you get to choose a couple of accessories that are included in the package. And this was one that I chose, and it's basically just a little microphone that I can point at people to hear them more clearly. It also has some other cool settings, like it has a table setting, so I can set it down on a table for, like, if we have a game night here at the house and I can kind of hear everybody in the round. That has been a real challenge, it's hearing in public. Once it's, or even, at my house, if it's more than one person speaking, I have a really hard time hearing. So using the microphone, it even has a mode where you can hang it around someone's neck, and that also really, really helps me hear a little bit more clearly. So for that whole month, it was just getting used to life with an implant. So I go back later for mapping, and again, I just want to encourage you, just have realistic expectations, and remember that the goal of the mapping is to make speech as intelligible as possible. And I say that for all my musician friends out there, because the other thing that's going on this whole entire time is I'm realizing that music does not sound great at all through my cochlear implant. I'm going to do another video on that. We won't get into it today, but, I went into that mapping appointment, really hoping that we could also improve that as well. And that's just not the goal. The goal of mapping is let's make sure you can understand and communicate well. That's the goal of the cochlear implant in and of itself. So they kind of tweaked my settings. It's kind of a similar process to the activation where they're testing some different amplitude levels. They're asking me some questions like, do things sound too hissy at certain spots or too low at certain spots, and they're kind of tweaking the settings. And then I went into the hearing test booth. Now, this is the part that's crazy, and I was told this is not the norm, but I actually scored a 94% word recognition score. Now, this is on my cochlear implant side, which is, they said, is pretty abnormal. Now, I had been doing my homework. They will suggest that's the other thing I did during that month is they suggest you really, really practice and do, quote, rehab. And basically, every cochlear implant company has resources on their website for advanced bionics. They have a whole site of exercises you can do, and it's really just a bunch of listening and word exercises where you're listening to speech and you're having to pick the word that you think was said. They have some exercises that are in different environments with noise and things to try to help challenge you there. And I had been doing my homework every day. I had been doing my exercises, my little rehab exercises, and all this stuff is free. There are also other paid resources as well that are out there, apps and things that you can train on. Heroes is a really great one that I used for a while, but after a while I thought, I don't really want to pay for this. I'm just going to use the free stuff. So that might have also been why my word score was pretty high, because I really had been doing my homework and training every day. Now, some people will say, they go back when they first get their implant, they go back every 6 weeks for mapping, or, this many months for mapping. For me, it was totally different. It was like, come back when you need a tweak. So, like, in fact, I'm actually going back here, it's January 20th when I'm recording this video. I'm actually going in early February for a tweak because things have kind of slipped a little bit, and that's pretty normal. And it could be for all kinds of reasons. I don't really know what's going on, but I'm having a little more trouble hearing. Things just sound different. So I'm going to go back for, a tune-up. And I think that's just the last bit of parting advice just to remember is, this is This is hardware that we have to maintain, and it has to get that, we have to get it checked up and tuned up. It's just like, taking your car in for maintenance or whatever. And so we now have hardware that we've got to keep up with and we've got to maintain. But with that hardware side, understand there's also the human part of it that interfaces with that. So, when things aren't working as well, it could be everything from, sure, the physicality of the hardware, but it could also be just your brain is having a hard time for whatever reason on any day. And it could also be related to, everything else that's going on in your ear, pressure, weather. If you have a head cold, there's all kinds of other stuff. So just keep in mind there's the hardware and the human element. And we've got to keep those things in check and maintained and do our part so that we can hear as well as possible, because that's just it. At the end of the day, hearing for us, if you've got a cochlear implant, it's a lot more work. It's a lot more work for our brain. There's lots of things that we have to do to make it as optimal as possible. And sure, it's like maybe I took it for granted, just rolling out of bed every day and just being able to hear and not having to do anything to work for that, right? And that's the reality is, we now are in a small subset of human beings that hearing requires extra work, extra equipment. And so things like mapping and all these other things we've got to do to maintain, just part of the deal now. At the end of the day, I think it's a small price to pay to be able to just hear anything at all. And there's a reason why I'm really grateful for that, and I'll talk about that in the next video. Something pretty major happened 2 days after surgery that made me even more thankful and reliant on my cochlear implant, so we'll talk about that next. So let me know in the comments, are you facing activation? Are you facing mapping? Or how did yours go? Like, did you have a unique experience or something unique to share? Let's talk about it in the comments.